Yes, it is week 17, the final week of the regular season here in the NFL season. Hard to believe we've already reached the end of the regular season. 32 teams, and more than half of them will play their final game, the 2015 calendar year, over. Last game for NFL teams. Everyone will play at least one game in 2016. A fun way to kick off the new year for all NFL fans. Maybe you start off the year rooting for your team and end up cheering with them for a victory, but only 12 will advance to the playoffs to try and continue their seasons. As of now, 10 of those 12 spots have been decided, but for the Philadelphia Eagles, they have decided to part ways with Chip Kelly and have decided that they will search for a new head coach. That we'll start off with that. I'm Barzin Visugian, Robert Zielinski here with me, Danny Trotman. Guys, I hope you had a Merry Christmas. Hope you guys are enjoying the holiday festivities. How's your weekend going?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Wait, you guys still have a weekend going? I've been at work for a couple days already.
No, my weekend's over. My
Okay.
weekend's over, man.
New Year coming up.
Nonetheless, we are here to talk football. Let's start off with Chip Kelly. It is kind of awkward timing with the Chip Kelly firing. This came on a Tuesday, late afternoon, early evening, depending where you live, what side of the country you're on. But overall, it is kind of weird because the team did play on a Thursday against the Washington Redskins. So several days the Eagles waited to do this, to pull the trigger on Chip Kelly. And on top of that, Tuesday is an off day in the NFL for everyone. So Chip Kelly not only got fired just a few days after a game, but he got fired on his off day, which is just a double whammy right there. But overall, are people surprised by this? Because to me, I don't know. Robert, you and I talked about this early in the season. This is a guy who tried to do a lot. He tried to pretty much bring anyone and everyone that played for him at Oregon, and it just didn't work. This is a guy who had a lot of Andy Reid's talented players. He had Mike Vick, Nick Foles, LaShawn McCoy, Deshaun Jackson, Jeremy Maclin. So many talented players that Andy Reid won with, and Chip Kelly won with them too, but down the road, he wanted to part ways with them because he wanted to bring his players here. Look, I understand a new head coach goes somewhere, but that doesn't mean all 53 of those players are bad. There are still some talented players on all 20 or 32 NFL teams. Chip Kelly just wanted to bring his own 53. That's not how it works. And on top of that, the Eagles got progressively worse, and that led to his firing. This is not a surprise to anyone, is it, Robert?
It isn't, and it's something that I think we've telegraphed since September when the Eagles had their own early struggles. We talked about in the pre-show how sort of he tried to take too much control. He started to try to mold the roster to his needs and take full Belichick control. I think that was an issue. I think that was a bit overstepping his boundaries, considered what other first-time NFL coaches will do. But it's a lot of hindsight. I mean, Jimmy Johnson, I believe, when he was first-time head coach of the Cowboys, he was taking a lot of players from the U. He was taking a lot of quarterbacks because they weren't very good. He was trying to develop them. The thing with Kelly and how he tried to mold the Eagles roster was more so that these players don't fit in the NFL. I mean, the biggest issue with Chip Kelly is his system is a gimmick. His offensive system is a gimmick. It's predicated on taking advantage of slow, unathletic players or unintelligent players, which simply don't exist in abundance in the NFL. It's if you guys look back on anything Oregon did when Kelly was there, I mean, any of their big game losses or national championship loss, I believe, to Auburn, they were being apart by his more physical teams or teams that had more complex systems. There's a thing that is often complained about by NFL coaches by over-complicating things, by having too complex playbooks, but there's also a thing where you have it too simple. In the NFL, teams are too smart. There's too much film. And then how Kelly tried to mold his roster with his gimmick offense, it all backfired on him because it was too simple.
Danny, we've seen a lot of college coaches come to the NFL and have some success. Pete Carroll's been to 2 Super Bowls. He won 1. We saw Jim Harbaugh in San Francisco briefly. He went to a Super Bowl championship game. Why couldn't Chip Kelly follow suit and bring his college success to the NFL?
I think he was just too stubborn. I mean, he came into the league. Um, Basically, like Robert said, kind of a gimmick. You know, they saw his system. The NFL was drooling over him for a while there before he came to the NFL because look at what this guy's doing. Look at how many plays he's running a game. Look how many yards he's putting up. Look, you know, it's impressive stuff. And so as soon as he came to the league, he was dead set on, hey, this is my system. I can make this system work wherever I go. And so he was so dead set on that, thought that he needed the players that he wanted. Did all the moving of pieces around, got those pieces there, and fell flat on his face for all the reasons that Robert said. And so I think he was just so stubborn, so dead set on proving that his system could work rather than adapting to the pace of the game, adapting to the way the game is played in the NFL. There are a lot of differences, and I think that was the major reason he failed.
Yeah, it is kind of disappointing to see because this is a guy who had a lot of potential, a lot of good offensive success, and look, I don't doubt that a good there's always this preconceived notion, college is a different game, and same thing with players that get drafted. That hey, look, just because they had success in college doesn't mean they're going to have success in the NFL, and that the same thing can be said about coaches. I think everyone deserves a fair shot. Chip Kelly earned his. I feel like he had a lot of success at Oregon. But to see him just fall down like this, it's not. NFL general managers don't want to see this. It obviously disappoints a lot of fans, and that led to a lot of boobers. You bring in DeMarco Murray, really the only notable non-Oregon connection, if I'm not mistaken. But on top of that, that was Alice. Now, guys, I wanted to ask you to conclude this topic because everyone's talking about Chip Kelly and Marcus Mariota reuniting in Tennessee. Here we go. Of course, the Oregon connection. Do you guys think, with everything that Chip Kelly did and all the mistakes he made in his first time as a head coach, are NFL owners and general managers, are they going to give him another shot so soon? More notably, would he go to Tennessee? I'll start with you, Danny.
I don't think he'll get another shot, at least right away, as a head coach anyway. I think there will be lots of guys interested in him as a OC, maybe, something like that. I don't think he would do it. I see him headed back to college, honestly.
Yeah, I can't see a team giving him a shot as a head coach, probably even an OC, because for say the biggest rumor or destination for him in Tennessee with Mariota, the guy he created and developed. Mariota's making progress as an NFL player. He's not going to revert to Kelly's gimmicks. That would be the worst thing for Marcus Mariota, and I don't think the Titans would be that short-sighted.
I somewhat hope that it does happen because, I agree with you. I don't think Marcus Mariota needs Chip Kelly to succeed, but because people love the connections, because right now the whole Titans and Kelly thing, to me, I want it to happen because I want people and Chip Kelly together, and I want people to see, look, that's not going to work in the NFL. What you did in college is not going to work against NFL defenses. So to me, I'm not rooting for failure, but I want NFL fans to have knowledge. It won't work in the NFL. Worth noting, Ian Rappaport of NFL Network, he tweeted that he spoke to someone from the Titans front office, asked them about Chip Kelly, and they commented saying that Chip Kelly, that they don't have interest in him because he is under case anymore. So we'll see how things unfold with that. Later on, as we do our podcast in the postseason, we'll touch on NFL teams that didn't make the playoffs but could make a surge, especially teams that have fairly newer coaches. But for right now, guys, there are some teams that have coaches that will coach their final game on Sunday, and then that leads to the infamous Black Monday, the Monday after the NFL regular season. I want to go around the table here, ask you guys which coach do you think will be guiding their team to their final game this Sunday, win or lose. Danny, I'll start with you. Who do you have on your list?
Jim Tomsula.
Jim Tomsula.
I don't know how likely it is, but there's been rumblings all season. I don't think it'll happen because ownership there is so stubborn, but that's one that's definitely, if he's got any time left, he's got 1 year, because he's not going to turn it around in San Francisco. He's not the guy. And there's already been rumblings. It's the first time I read an article today that a coach has actively basically volunteered to be the head coach while there's still one sitting in the seat. It was help me out here, guys. Mike Holmgren.
I could if I would.
Mike Holmgren came out today.
Oh, okay.
68 years old, and he's been retired, right? And he comes out and says, I'd love to be the 49ers coach. Well, the 49ers have a coach, so that's kind of a dick move. But it definitely brings a lot of intrigue to the fans in San Francisco. And there's a lot of, they already have two past head coaches on the staff there, and Eric Mangini and Tony Sperano, and there's a lot of other decisions they could have made other than Tom Sula this last go-round after Harbaugh left. And so his first year in the league, he basically had ungodly amounts of issues with players retiring and everything else, but he definitely didn't take any forward steps as the season went on. All he did was probably move them up a couple of spots in the draft order for the upcoming year. So that one wouldn't surprise me necessarily. I think if he's got any time left, it's 1 year, and if Jed York was smart, he'd certainly listen to Mike Holmgren's courtship there.
You sure you don't want to get rid of the Yorks, Danny?
Oh, I'd love to get rid of the Yorks. They destroyed that team.
Robert, which head coach is on the top of your list?
All right, well, I'm going to go to Louisiana and Sean Payton. Not exactly. I don't think it's as much of a shocker, but it's something off the grid. Obviously, Sean Payton's the guy that has brought the Saints back into relevancy. He was the guy that took over after Hurricane Katrina, built that franchise up. First-year NFC Championship game. If I'm not mistaken, 4 or 5 playoff appearances out of his now 10 seasons in New Orleans. But much like, and he's not a bad coach, but the thing with me with Sean Payton is he's sort of worn out his welcome. The Saints have become stagnant. They haven't improved defensively. Drew Brees, the guy that he molded the franchise up with, is really showing his age the past few seasons. They're now 2 years removed from the postseason. He's never exactly coached an elite defense other than 2009 when they won the Super Bowl, of course. I think it's just really time for the Saints. And there's even been rumors that he's already interested in another head coaching position in San Diego, which I'm sure we'll get to with your pick. So the Saints might be ready to move on, and it might be the best move for him as well, considering the lack of talent or how things have just gone in New Orleans recently.
Well, spoiler alert, Robert already gave it away, but one of the head coaches who I think is definitely going to get the pink slip, it's got to be Mike McCoy. I think he is a good offensive-minded guy. And Philip Rivers having, I don't want to say a great season, but statistically a fairly good season. Sure, make what you want of those passing yards, but a lot of times with passing yards, they can come out of desperation. When a team is losing by a lot, defenses play soft, and guess what? NFL offenses tend to move the ball a lot better. But the thing about Mike McCoy, and I really want people to be aware of this, out of the 15 more with Denver, which we'll touch on later, but 11 of those 15 games were decided by one possession. Out of those 11 games, San Diego lost 8 of them. Great football teams find a way to pull through in those close games. And the San Diego Chargers didn't find a way to finish victorious, at least in most of those games right there. So I think an NFL head coach has to take responsibility, because coaches, first of all, they need to put their players in position to find a way to get through those situations. And look, if the players are not executing, it's on the coaching staff. I think ownership has a reason to ask, hey, look, why is it that the players are not able to finish games? So, and plus, there's a lot going on right now in San Diego with the team possibly moving out to LA. Who knows about that right now? But so much drama right now in San Diego, and I think it can be compared to Tom Coughlin in New York. There's so much made of the stat of what New York's record would be if games had ended just a minute or two sooner, and that they would be a team possibly receiving a bye week in the NFC. But look, it's a 60-minute game. You've got to be able to conclude football games and finish. It's 60 minutes, or at least try to win 10 or 11 games so he can. But that's picking the top 5 of the draft this year. And again, it's kind of a similar story with Coughlin. It's just the Giants were in such a bad division and had really a shot all year long to still make the playoffs. Robert, I kind of want to ask you before we move on, because I feel like the hottest name right now of an assistant is Adam Gase, who's, of course, with the Chicago Bears, also had some success with the Denver Broncos following John Fox to Chicago. But I'm kind of curious what you think of Adam Gase, and kind of being in the Chicago area, what are you hearing? I mean, how much of a hot name is Adam Gase right now?
Gase, he's probably one of the top names considered for a head coach position right now. But the thing is that the thing's been reverberated recently throughout the Chicago media and the bloggers and the people that'll basically talk about the Bears. I mean, he's basically the reason that Jay Cutler has enjoyed this resurgence. Jay Cutler has never had a 2-to-1 touchdown-interception ratio in his career. Jay Cutler is 4th in the NFL in third down passing and third down passer rating, only to Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, and Carson Palmer. So that's a lot of that, or most of that, has been attributed to the work that Cutler has done with Gase. But people still have issues with his play calling. People still have issues with how vanilla he has everything. It's a very Trestman-esque to everybody. A lot of these screens, the Bears don't necessarily test defenses downfield. A lot of his leadership and decision-making, play calling-wise, has been, it's been questionable to say the least, and that's sort of, at least in the Chicago area, that's where his head coaching candidacy has sort of simmered down. I still think that he'd be great for somebody like, say, Detroit or New Orleans. But he might not necessarily be ready, at least by estimations of the vibe that I've gotten in the past few weeks.
All right, we'll see.
His name has been floating around the circle for probably 3 years now. So I don't know. I think he's probably about due. I would, at least from what I'm seeing, what I've heard over the past few years.
Wanted to give him the job, Danny. So
there you go.
You mentioned his name's been around for a while, and look, he's been pretty smart to not just jump on it the first year. And I'm sure he's gotten offers, and his agent has been in contact with him about this over the years. He's been pretty smart. I think it's kind of like college sports. An athlete, just because they have one great year as a freshman or even 2 years, they see right away what the media is saying, what scouts in the NFL and NBA are saying, and then boom, they decide to go to the draft, and maybe they get a lottery pick or get drafted in the first round, but they tend to be disappointments sometimes, or it takes a while for them to flourish. So, and I think assistant coaching is kind of a similar thing, and I think Adam Gase has been pretty smart about this, and as you said, I think he's about due for it. So we'll see how things unfold with Adam Gase and a lot of NFL assistants, and even other former head coaches like Chip Kelly, who are going to be looking for an NFL gig down the road. But teams that are still fighting, a team that and football, a team that clinched a playoff spot and did it in dramatic fashion, the Denver Broncos. Why not? It's the last Monday Night Football game of the season. Let's end it in style. McManus hilariously missed a 45-yard field goal, forcing overtime, only to redeem himself in the battle between backup QBs in overtime. And now, of course, A.J. McCarron had that fumble. Well, kind of interesting what happened with the fumble, which we'll touch on or non-fumble, I should say, in just a moment, but a play later, the game ended anyway. But this is kind of weird, guys. The Bengals' victory would have affected just about every team in the AFC playoff picture. It would have eliminated the Colts, giving the Texans the AFC South. The Chiefs would have taken the lead in the AFC West for at least 6 days, possibly could have won it on Sunday with a win or a Denver loss. And then you look at how the Bengals would have clinched a first-round bye and perhaps could have won that number 1 seed in the AFC. That also depends on what could have happened this weekend, but instead, the Bengals not able to achieve that mission right there. So crazy to see how much the Bengals' victory could have impacted the AFC, but nonetheless, the Broncos, kind of a hard team to dissect ever since Peyton Manning was benched and injured, and now Brock Osweiler has taken over. Guys, what have we learned about Brock Osweiler and the Denver Broncos up to this point as they currently hold a 2 seed in the AFC? I'll start with you, Robert.
Well, what I've learned about the Broncos is that they still have the same elite defense, but Brock Osweiler isn't necessarily special. I mean, I think he's a glorified game manager. I think he's a little bit above that pedestal. He can go down and win you a game in some respects. But the conference is weaker. The AFC is weaker, and you wrote it down in your rundown. So that's what gives Denver hopes, considering the injuries and how sort of the AFC playoff picture is a little muddled down. But I just don't see anything special in Osweiler. I mean, last night the Bengals are a great defensive team, but if the Broncos were going to put that away, if Osweiler was the man, then I don't know. I kind of wanted to see more. I wanted to see better poise necessarily. I wanted to see maybe long term he grows into an actual type of starter, top 10 guy, top 15 guy. But right now I don't buy. I think last night's game was actually more about the Bengals, but we will get to that.
I disagree slightly. Osweiler led the Broncos to two, and I say this loosely, two game-winning drives. Right before the end of regulation, he did his job in putting the Broncos in position to set up for the field goal. Now, of course, we touched on McManus and what happened then, but then in overtime he did it again. Said, all right, if I have to do it twice, I'll do it twice. Led the Broncos to where they needed to be to get an easier, shorter field goal, and it got the job done not once but twice for the Broncos. Danny, what's your stance?
I can see both sides. I lean a little bit towards Robert's side. I think with some of the weapons he's got around him, he's got two of the top receivers in the NFL. I mean, he's got Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, guys that are fast and just athletic as hell, and have proven themselves to be great receivers. He's got Ronnie Hillman and C.J. Anderson, guys that in tandem are a pretty good running back mixed together. They each got their own things. He's got Owen Daniels isn't anything to write home about, but my point is they got some weapons in Denver, and to put up 20 points coming down the stretch here and needing that game basically to potentially they could, if they'd have lost, they still could have missed the playoffs, So yeah. To be in that situation and only be able to put up that many points with the weapons you got around you, he hasn't really impressed me all that much. He's more of a game manager in my eyes, and he's done that. I mean, he throws accurately. He doesn't do anything horrible. He doesn't do anything special, but that's my thoughts.
What do you guys make of the Ed Hockley situation, what he and his crew did, in which there was a face mask penalty on the Broncos that was not called, and right as the Bengals were getting ready to snap the football to move on with the next play, there was a meeting with Hockley and an assistant announced the penalty. It was called right, but I don't know why it took so long for something like that to happen. Danny, what do you make of that situation there?
I mean, I'm glad they got the call. It is really weird. That's probably the latest flag I've ever seen in terms of a penalty like that. You'll see late flags in other situations, but for a face mask, you expect something like that to come out right away, and to see it come that late is a little bit interesting. I'm glad they got it right, but at the same time, at some point, it wasn't their call, right? It was somebody else whispering in their ear, or it was you'll see conferences amongst all the referees and umpires on the field a lot of times, and somebody will say, hey, I saw this, or hey, did anybody see this? And they'll come to a mutual decision, but that isn't really what seemed to have happened in that situation. So it was a little odd. I'm glad they got it right because it was evident that it happened, but it was definitely strange to see.
And Robert, we know what's going to happen in the postseason. The NFL announced a couple of weeks ago that the officials in the postseason, they're going to have an opportunity to interact with officials from New York to give them a chance to get the right calls. And officials have been scrutinized and criticized quite a lot this year.
Yeah, that it's going to be a correction because they don't want to make the same mistakes that have been hyperbolized or scrutinized as much as you noted. throughout the entire regular season. That's what happened here. I'm the resident conspiracy theorist here, no Coast Bias, and that's exactly what happened here. They got the call wrong. They didn't want the Bengals to be screwed. Hockley noted it. New York phoned him in, and they absolutely talked to him. I don't necessarily have an issue with it. Maybe the late flag, maybe considering that that so many calls are missed, the Broncos would feel that they're singled out. But I don't necessarily. I don't think it was necessarily a bad thing that they radioed in the Hockley or whatever kind of fancy Bluetooth device he had in his ear. I mean, he probably had it on his bicep or something.
One note about the Broncos before we move on, and we'll come back to Denver later as they are still fighting for an AFC West title as Kansas City's hanging in there. Peyton Manning, last week there was that crazy story about Peyton Manning and that he would be upset about being Brock Osweiler's backup, and he was serious about not being a backup. So clearly Peyton Manning hates the media because on Saturday night, Al Jazeera reported that Manning's wife was receiving HGH, and that HGH was given to Manning, and this is all according to the pharmacist who provided the HGH, and other athletes were tied into this, including Mike Tyson. Manning released a statement through the Broncos that night, refuting the report. Sunday morning on ESPN, the source recants the report, says he made it up, which, why would you even put yourself in this position then? Why do you make stuff up to the media? And then Manning did a TV interview, visibly upset, calling it garbage, called it defamation. Listen, obviously there's a journalism issue here, not necessarily on Al Jazeera's part. And I know Al Jazeera, not the most notable media outlet out there. Some people heard about this for the first time, but as far I was watching Al Jazeera, I haven't had a chance to look at the documentary. I don't think I heard it's something special. I'll still watch it. I have it DVR'd, but I was watching Al Jazeera TV that following morning, and it honestly looks like they're filming footage through their phone from the iPhone Razr or something. I mean, that's what the quality looks like. But as far as this whole Manning thing goes, the NFL's been kind of quiet about this because, let's be honest, if this was Tom Brady's name linked to HGH, we know the NFL on a holiday weekend would have began investigating overnight on Saturday and into Sunday morning. I don't know. That's just my take. I think it's fishy that the NFL has been pretty ho-hum about it, pretty silent, not even saying anything about this, really.
Yeah, you noted it in the pre-show how nobody's been talking about it. There's a reason that the media coverage has been slanted, how it's sort of died down in the past few days. Because nobody wants to run with it because they're not sure if they should or they're not sure if they'll have the necessary credibility. This is not, I don't think this is me or you necessarily being conspiracy theorists. That's exactly what's happening. To know, I mean, the quality on Al Jazeera isn't always the best, but that is a very credible news website. I think that's what a lot of people have misconstrued. Al Jazeera breaks a lot of stories. They actually, people don't know them because they're sort of, because Mad TV, I believe, had a parody of them for years. But they're actually a very credible news source. I don't know if their source recanting the documentary necessarily helps out their cause on breaking this story, but I don't know. There's just something missing here. I feel like we're gonna learn some more over the next month or so. Obviously, Peyton Manning's not gonna immediately agree with something that could destroy his career or his legacy. So there's also that.
I think I agree. I think that maybe. I mean, Peyton's basically the golden boy of an entire generation of NFL football. He's been the guy since Indy, and it's been, his 17th, 16th year in the NFL or something like that. He owns every record in the NFL. He just passed the passing yardage record, 3-4 weeks ago. I guess it was his last game before he got hurt. So I think with there still being so many questions, I don't think anybody wants to hop on the bandwagon of throwing out rumors, spreading rumors with a player of his caliber, because if it comes out that it was all made up, or if there are more facts coming out over the next month or whatever that case is, and there probably is some weird factual stuff behind the scenes that nobody knows about, but nobody wants to jump on board with a rumor at this point because of how powerful of a figure he's been in the NFL for the last 15 years.
Yeah, it is. I mean, look at Tom Brady, because this is a guy, and I can definitely hear an echo. Is that you, Robert?
No, I think that's you.
That's me. I'm echoing myself.
I don't hear that on mine.
Okay, I hear an echo somewhere. I don't know what's going on. It's
Technical,
getting me.
technical difficulties, people.
Technical difficulties on Google Plus. I don't hear the echo anymore, so that's a good sign.
Continue.
Fixed it.
Okay. All right, appreciate it. Anyway, here's what I wanted to touch on. As I hear the echo again, I think I'm just gonna take up one earbud. I love this show sometimes, but seriously, a guy like Tom Brady, look at what's been made about the Patriots with Spygate and Deflategate, whatever you want to talk about. This is a guy who's won 4 Super Bowls, but he's probably going to be remembered more for all those allegations than this. Peyton Manning, sure, yeah, he has all the regular season records and whatnot, and now this, I mean, this is going to probably overshadow some of the success he's had. So we'll see what the NFL does with this. I'm sure this is not the last we'll hear about it. Whenever Peyton Manning makes himself public to the local media, this is going to come up again. So we'll definitely hear about this down the road. But another big story over the weekend, on the field at least, the biggest story on the field, the Panthers, undefeated no more, falling to the Falcons, of all teams, the Atlanta Falcons, which I would have not seen this coming. The Falcons did remain alive for the playoffs, but only for 7 to 8 hours, as the Giants fell to the Vikings. Atlanta needed help from the Giants. Crazy enough, both number 1 seeds going into Week 17 are up for grabs due to this loss to the Falcons, and then of course the Patriots falling to the Jets. But guys, a lot is still being made of the Panthers and whether or not they're a great team, who they've beat. You know, going 14-0 is no easy feat. I don't care. You can play the worst team in the NFL 14 times. These are NFL players, and it's not easy getting to this point. It seems like a weird question, but I still think they're a great team. They've proven a lot to me because I didn't think they were going to be at this point. I think if an NFL team proves something to you, if they prove that they are better than what you expected, if they succeeded at expectations, I think they are a great team. I think they've definitely earned some respect. Danny, is this a great team?
Yeah, it is. The Falcons haven't been a great team this year, but they have great elements on their team. They got Devontae Freeman, who I don't know where he ranks right now, but at least through the first half of the season, he was the leading rusher in the NFL. They got Julio Jones, who's a top wide receiver in the NFL. Matt Ryan's, above average quarterback, has had great spells in his career. They haven't showed it on the field this year, but they're not a horrible team per se. So, like you said, if you could play the Cleveland Browns 14 times in a year, and you're probably not going to win it 14 times. Something's going to happen, right? Somebody's going to show up and beat you. I think they are a great team. Honestly, I think this, if anything, is probably going to help them for the playoffs. It's going to take the pressure off of them. They already got the normal playoff pressure that they're going to have to fight through, but with the potential undefeated pressure to add on to that, I think this will help ease their nerves a little bit. They got that first loss out of the way, and I think they turn around and stomp Tampa Bay this weekend and head into the playoffs and just rolling right along. So I think they're a great team.
Yeah, as Danny noted, the undefeated pressure and such. I mean, that's sort of what kind of came on here. People were basically already writing it off that they're going to be 16-0. Basically discounting the fact of how hard it is to win 16 games in a row. I mean, I think they already had a long regular season win streak before this game, 18 games or such, but in one individual season, especially against an individual rivalry, as Danny noted, Julio Jones, doing whatever he wanted on the field on Sunday. I think they also overlooked Atlanta, given what they did in the last matchup they had with them, a Carolina blowout, 38-0. So all those factors played in. They're still a great team. They're still a top 5 team. They're still a Super Bowl contender. In my mind, they're one of the 3 teams that could win the Super Bowl in the NFC. The only thing that I want to note from Sunday's matchup is sort of the flaw that we've had, this concern we've had about them all season. Ted Ginn was limited. Ted Ginn came out of the game, I believe, And they don't really the receiving option other than Greg Olsen. It's a Cam Newton show. Cam Newton sort of has to do everything, and he's been able to do that this season. But in the postseason against Arizona or in the postseason against Seattle, is it going to come back to bite them? If they can, I mean, they could still overcome that, but that's their flaw. They don't have necessarily fantastic playmakers other than Olsen and Newton. And Ginn, as Danny has noted before, is more of a product of Newton than Ginn actually being great. They're still a great team, but just something to watch.
Well, with the Panthers falling, the Chiefs now have the best winning streak in the NFL, and we've touched on this, a remarkable turnaround, 1-5, and then going on a 9-game winning streak. Had the Chiefs started this winning streak 1 week later, they would not be in the playoffs at this exact moment. They would still have a shot at it, but the way the Chiefs have done it, they got hot at the right time. And again, still a shot to win the AFC West right now. We'll see what happens with Denver. But you talk about the job Ron Rivera has done, leading the Panthers to a 14-0 start. Andy Reid, I think he seriously is a candidate for Coach of the Year from what might be the biggest turnaround in a season. Now, there's only been one other 1-5 team to make the playoffs, but that team in 1970, the Bengals, didn't win. The Chiefs could be the first team in NFL history to start 1-5 and win a playoff game. Andy Reid, on a 9-game winning streak right now, does he deserve Coach of the Year over Ron Rivera, or does Ron Rivera have it locked up after a 14-0 start? I'll start with you, Robert.
Ron Rivera has it locked up. I mean, I know you necessarily love Andy Reid getting Coach of the Year, but no one expected the Panthers to be 14-0. No one expected or not 14-1. No one expected them to have a 15-1 regular season, the number 1 seed in the NFC, which in all likelihood they're going to get. He's galvanized that team. They had the most Pro Bowlers, maybe an underappreciated squad, and you can't discount the matchup enough. It's not a knock at all against Reid, but a 1-5 start, even with a 9-game winning streak, you can't necessarily forget that ending. And I think some people still have the Chiefs making the postseason regardless. So they had this expectation of being able to overcome Jamal Charles' loss, being able to sort of get back into that mold of the success they've had with Reid in recent years is still commendable. But it's Rivera and then everybody else. It's really not even close to me.
Yeah, I do agree. If the Panthers were 10-0, 11-0, and then lost the game, I think maybe then the Coach of the Year award might be given to Reid at that point. But 14-0, that's no easy task. I don't know how many, what the list is for how many teams have gone 14-0. Probably just a handful, not very many. Danny, do you follow suit on that?
I do. If they were giving out awards at the end of the year and they said Andy Reid, I wouldn't be disappointed or shocked necessarily. I think he's had one hell of a year, and especially this 9-game run that they're on. But there's one name I want to bring up that I got Andy Reid behind, and it's Bruce Arians. That guy has had one hell of a year in Arizona, and ever since he got to Arizona and was made head coach. And I know it's a 1-year award, but the things he's done in Arizona over the last 3 years or so, he's basically brought that team out of the gutter, for lack of a better term, and made them great. And here they are with a potential to also be the number 1 seed in the NFC right now if things were to swing their way. So that's another guy that I wouldn't be surprised to see get it. I agree. I think it'll be Rivera, but to see either of those other two guys, Bruce Arians or Andy Reid, come out, I wouldn't be upset about it by any means. So,
well, even though the Chiefs might be the hottest team going into the playoffs, I still think the more dominant offense, at least in the AFC, isn't even in the playoff picture right now. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers, who really need some help. Got stunned by the Ravens this past week. A Broncos win erased one possibility for the Steelers to get in. Now, the Steelers, again, still have a chance. They must beat the Browns, and then the Bills must beat the Jets. And we'll get into our predictions later if we think the Steelers can come through. Now, if the Steelers get in, I feel like they would be the most dangerous offense to face in the AFC because, let's face it, look at the rest of the AFC. The Patriots have been banged up throughout the season. Even though they're still winning games, At times they've fallen apart, though. The Broncos don't have the most viable offense. Who doesn't matter who's under center. The Bengals have A.J. McCarron, who hasn't proven much yet. The Chiefs' offense has improved, but still they're without Jamal Charles and Alex Smith. I think he is a good quarterback, but is he the number one guy you want to rely on going in? They've had a quarterback convention this season. Brandon Weeden is now starting games and kind of winning now for the Texans. The Colts are not great if they get in, whether it's Hasselbeck or Andrew Luck, who has not been cleared to return yet. How confident are you in the Jets' offense? I think that's another question. All of this right now, yes, even without Le'Veon Bell, this Steelers offense is still dynamic. And I do want to I do want to bring up that Big Ben and Antonio Brown, I think that Le'Veon Bell injury made the Steelers more dangerous because that forced the Steelers to rely on the passing game even more. So Bell's absence only meant good things for the passing game in Pittsburgh. I think the best offense in the AFC might not even make the playoffs. Is that something you feel would happen, Danny?
I think you're absolutely right. The way we're looking right now, like you said, all those injuries. You got A.J. McCarron leading the team in Cincinnati, and they may get Dalton back if they can make a deep run, but who knows? And that's a great point. I mean, their list of needs to get into the playoffs is short. It's basically they only need one other thing besides they need to win the game against Cleveland this weekend. But they're by far the most dynamic offense in the AFC right now, and to see them miss would be kind of a disappointment. But if they can sneak into the playoffs, I think they make a deep run. They're that dangerous offensively. Defensively, they're not great, and so you're going to come down to a team like their offense versus a defense like the Broncos or like the Bengals or the Chiefs. So, they would be the only strong offense in the playoffs in that case, and everybody else would be the strong defensive team. So it'd definitely be some battles if they could sneak in. That's for sure. It'd be entertaining.
And give credit to Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, this guy is pretty tough. I remember at one point he was injured, missed a couple games. There was a report that later on in the season when he did return, he would miss 1 to 2 games. Didn't even miss a game. Later Jones started, but he got injured, and so Big Ben came back in that game. This guy has proven a lot. We'll get to the Steelers more later on when we do our predictions. Real quickly, Robert, I'll give you this topic here. Eric Weddle fined $20,000 for not being in the locker room, instead watching his daughter perform at halftime. I don't know. So much for those Football It's Family commercials because Eric Weddle got fined for family in this case.
Yeah, the classic no fun league, and I don't know what the Chargers are doing because your all-pro safety. He's 30 years old, and he's going to be an unrestricted free agent, so you're basically doing everything possible to piss him off. You're moving to L.A., your team direction isn't exactly the brightest right now, or in any fashion that a 30-year-old that wants to start winning and wants to possibly contend for a championship would want to return. And to fine him because he wanted to watch his daughter and stay on for halftime. I mean, at the NFL and the Chargers and these teams will find anything that's against their football culture and their football mentality. Be with your brothers in the locker room, something like that. It kind of disgusts me a little bit. It kind of this sounds like a hot take, but it's true, and I know to some degree you guys agree with me as well. I just hope Weddle goes somewhere he's appreciated, like Oakland, to be as the Sharia Stadium with San Diego in all likelihood, and he'll be able to stick it to them for not enjoying time with his daughter.
Let's move on and go to our picks. As the Chargers, we mentioned this with Mike McCoy, and not a lot going right there in San Diego, which a year from now we might be saying L.A. Who knows? But as far as our picks go, teams that are still competing, one team hanging on the edge, the Indianapolis Colts have a chance to win the AFC South, but they need basically a million things to have happen. They need the Ravens to beat the Bengals on the road. The Colts have to beat the Titans themselves at home. Texans have to lose to the Jaguars, at home. Chargers to lose on the road to Denver. The Jets to lose to the Bills in Buffalo, Saints to fall on the road to the Falcons, Chiefs to drop a game at Arrowhead to Oakland, New England to lose in Miami, and the Browns to lose to the Steelers at home. You guys got that on your list right there, your brains? All right.
Yeah.
That's what's need to happen, including on those wondering why the Saints come into this. That has to do with common opponents, and then also the strength of victory and strength of schedule. So I think that plays a role. Listen, the Chiefs had a 1.4% chance of making the playoffs after a 1-5 start. I don't think the Colts make it. It's a very, very slim chance, but you know what? If the Chiefs can do it from a 1.4% chance, I don't know what exactly the percentage is that ESPN or whoever has given them, but there is a chance of some sort. But in the end, I think Houston wraps up the AFC South because, look, the Chiefs are competing for a division. The Jets want to try and improve their seeding. I'm trying to look. New England obviously wants a number 1 seed, and none of those teams can afford a lot. The rest of these teams are playing for jobs, but other teams are playing for playoff spots. So I don't think it happens.
No way it happens. I mean, come on. I was shaking my head like this, like how it's the Colts are dead in the water. I'm sorry for any Colts fans that watch our podcast. Your season's over. Get Andrew Luck healthy. You're done. You stick a fork in your team. It's 10 scenarios. Farzine, you're noting how the Chiefs had a 1.4% chance, or you noted how a few years ago they had a 4% chance to make the playoffs. They needed all these things to happen. These are 10 scenarios, and you've made the argument for myself. I can't even like dignify it. The Colts are done. Stick a fork.
Well, if you do bet $100 in Vegas for this, Danny, what do you get if the Colts make it?
$147,000. So even if you got $20 throw down, if you're in Vegas, you still win $30,000 out of the deal. And I did see an article like a week ago about some random lady who knew nothing about sports picked like a 15-game parlay. Thought she lost it, ended up getting it all and won an ungodly amount of money. So hey, if you're in Vegas, throw down $20 and you might buy a new vehicle come next Monday.
I would put down $20 because you never know. It'd be cool to say, hey, look, I got this right and I got this much money. You never know.
I'll give you guys
that. Who gets the number 1 seed in the AFC? Here's a look here. The Pats visit the Dolphins, the Chargers visit the Broncos, and the Bengals host the Ravens. Those 3 teams vying for a number 1 seed, or at least a first-round bye, and only 2 of them can get it. I think the Pats get the number 1 seed, and the Chargers have Broncos can take care of business. I think those 2 teams get the first-round byes.
I agree. I think all 3 of those teams win, but with the Patriots having the number 1 seed right now, they'd obviously stay in that position. I think all 3 win, but the Pats wrap up that number 1.
Yeah, the Patriots are the favorite. I mean, I locked them in so much against the Jets last week, and that basically burned me. But I don't see them losing the game to the Dolphins, who have looked just dreadful, who have no reason really to play. While in a game the Patriots really need to solidify themselves for home field advantage, to get Julian Edelman healthy with a bye week. I can't see them losing. All the other 2 teams will win and put themselves in position, but it's not going to happen. New England will have the number 1 seed and really make themselves an AFC favorite.
I'll start with you on this one, Robert. The NFC, Panthers play the Bucs at home, and the Cardinals visit the number 6 Seahawks. So 2 very competitive teams, and I think the Seahawks might be able to improve their positioning in the wild card seed. I could be wrong, but as far as the number 1 seed, who do you think takes that in the NFC?
In the NFC, the Panthers, or rather the Seahawks and Cardinals game is after the Panthers and Bucs game. So the Cardinals will already know their standing. In all likelihood, I mean, I'm not sure if you guys saw this past weekend, but Tampa Bay lost to the Bears. So now they're going to beat Carolina on the road. That's not going to happen. Arizona will already know their standing. And to contrary to whatever Bruce Arians says, Carson Palmer likely plays the first quarter. A lot of the top stars for Arizona plays the first quarter or so, and they'll rest against Seattle. So Carolina will lock it up. I mean, Jameis Winston looked hapless against the Bears. How good is he going to look against Carolina on the road? Carolina will have the number 1 seed. Sorry.
I agree. I think Carolina takes number 1 in the NFC. Yeah, they'll destroy the Bucks, and then the Cardinals. I don't know. I got the Cardinals over the Seahawks to lock up number 2.
Number 2 is
that game should be very, very entertaining, though. We'll see. And one of the top defenses versus one of the top offenses. So
I would ask who wins the AFC West between the Chiefs and Broncos, but we all agree that the Broncos are going to win and have a first-round bye. So we're not going to touch on it too much. The Chiefs probably are going to end up with the number 5 seed, and hey, you never know sometimes. That might be a good thing, as some fans have around here said that, because that means you're going to visit the winner of the AFC South, which could be most likely Houston. I'll say this, Robert. By Kansas City Chiefs fans' luck, it could be the Colts, because through the last 20 years or 22 years, the Chiefs have not won a playoff game. And which team, with the exception of one season in 2010, which team has always put a dent on Kansas City's playoff hopes?
The Colts.
It's the Colts. So by Kansas City's luck, the Colts might get in. But we're not going to get into that, because we all agree that the Broncos are winning the West. Here's an interesting one. We touched on the Steelers and just how dominant they really are. And quite honestly, I think they are the best offense out of the 7 teams in the AFC, pardon me. But do they get in? The Jets visit the Bills, and the Steelers visit the Browns. Both wildcard teams are visiting other teams. They're going to be visiting division rivals and trying to win in order to clinch. The Steelers need the Jets to lose to the Bills, and the Steelers got to beat the Browns. And Johnny Manziel, he's kind of showing some competitiveness, but still a long ways to go. I think the Steelers do beat the Browns. The Jets and the Bills, I could actually see the Bills pulling off the upset and stunning the Jets and ending their season. So I say the Steelers do get in.
Danny?
I agree. I think they get in. I think the Bills upset the Jets this weekend. The Steelers get to show off that offense in the playoffs.
As Danny noted when we talked about the Steelers, and as you neglected to mention, Farzine, you really only talked about the Steelers' offense. They have the 30th ranked pass defense in the NFL. They let Ryan Mallett throw for 275 yards and pick them apart. A guy who was cut by Houston for missing a team flight. A guy who caused locker room turmoil for a Houston team that's one of the hottest teams in the league since they cut him. Johnny Manziel isn't the best, but I wouldn't be surprised if he threw for 250 on the Steelers. And I mean, they'll make it much. The Steelers still may win, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns pull the upset. But the Jets aren't losing to the Bills. I like what Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker have done recently. I think one of the more underrated players this season has been Ryan Fitzpatrick. How well and composed he's been. It is a rivalry game. I also wouldn't be surprised if the Bills pull that off. But I think the Jets get in. I think the Steelers basically blew all their chances by losing a very winnable game against the Ravens.
You mentioned Ryan Mallett, and this is worth bringing up for just 2 seconds, because Brandon Weeden, Ryan Mallett, and I know I'm forgetting another quarterback on the Ravens. I can't. Or no, the Ravens is Ryan Mallett. Jimmy Clausen's the other guy, I think.
No, Jimmy Clausen's also with the Ravens, though.
Well, my point is, there are multiple backup quarterbacks that have started for multiple teams this season. I mean, that's how bad NFL QB positioning has been this season. But last topic, guys, before we get out of here, the NFC North up for grabs, and luckily the NFL was able to find one good game to flex to Sunday Night Football. And this is really the only more dominant game really this is the only good option for Sunday Night Football. It's the Vikings at number 5 visiting the Packers at number 3. Nobody picked the nobody picked the Vikings to win the NFC North, except for who, Robert?
You.
And I do remember your reaction to that. You guys know my prediction. I'm going with my preseason pick. I think the Vikings get the win on the road in Green Bay.
If we're going to note that, if the Chargers beat the Broncos and the Chiefs beat the Raiders, who was the person that picked the Chiefs to win the AFC West?
I did too, but I don't think it happens now.
No. Better one to credit since we're basically winding down. who picked Carolina as one of the best teams in the league?
Okay, yes, you did. You did do that. And I already gave you your due diligence for that.
Thank you. Anyway, what was it? The Vikings. The Vikings are going to beat the Packers. Aaron Rodgers and that offensive line's in shambles. Sunday Night Football. It'll be a blowout in Lambeau. Not a blowout, but the Vikings will win by 10. They're one of the hotter teams in the league. Teddy Bridgewater is playing really well. I can't trust the Packers right now, especially how hapless they looked against Arizona. Aaron Rodgers saying how they're going to play much better with everything on them when everything's on the line. Everything's on the line right now. Everything's been on the line the past few weeks. They had a chance at the 2 seed against Arizona. It's not going to happen. Minnesota, team on the rise that'll probably lose in the wild card round, but they're going to win on Sunday night.
Yeah, looking at the Packers, they have, since the bye week, they have lost 5 games, have gone 4-5 since the bye week in week 7, and it just hasn't been really good. And I think the Packers are kind of a vulnerable team going into the postseason. Danny, get us out of here. Who wins the North?
Vikings do. Just looking back at what they did, or what the Packers did this last weekend, lost by 30 points to Arizona, whereas you look back 3 weeks and the Vikings lost by 3 points to Arizona. So whatever that means, one of those teams is obviously a little stronger at this point in the season. You just noted their Green Bay's record the last 9 weeks. The Vikings are looking pretty good. Adrian Peterson's looking solid, and great form coming along to the end of the season. He's still running all over people. I think the Vikings handle business.
One thing I do want to note before we close it out. Sorry. It might actually be a blessing in disguise for Green Bay, considering that they might lock themselves into a matchup as a wild card to go into Washington. I mean, the Redskins have been playing hot, so maybe that gives the Redskins a better shot to win a playoff game, while Minnesota would lock themselves into a home playoff game against Seattle. So it's a measure of who wants to play. Who wants the easier, tougher matchup? I don't think NFL teams necessarily look at that the way we do, analysts or bloggers, whatever we would call ourselves. But that's something to consider.
Well, hopefully Kirk Cousins doesn't take a knee right before halftime in field goal range in a playoff game, because that may not fly in a playoff game. But nonetheless, even though at one point there were a lot of teams that were in contention, we still have some exciting games here in Week 17. So it should be fun to watch. And by this time next week, we'll be breaking down playoff games, which will be a lot of fun. And we'll also touch on some NFL teams that didn't make the playoffs, but teams that could make a surge next season and possibly come away as a dark horse fully to talk about those. But nonetheless, Danny, Robert, it's been fun doing this all season long. And, of course, Nate's been doing it with us again. He's been pretty busy lately, but he said he'll be back for a podcast before the end of the season. So we'll try to have him on at some point this year.
I do want to shout out myself for winning the No Coast Bias Fantasy Football League last night. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers screwed me out of mine.
I got by. I had the kicker for the Bengals didn't quite score enough points for my opponent, so I edged it out last night. So.
Oh. Boy, there you go. Well, there you go. Congratulations to you, sir. Taking home the No Coast Bias crown. And on that note, we'll end it here. Thanks to all of you guys for listening. And until then, we'll talk to you next week.